אין אנו מגבילים אפילו פעם אחת, אפילו פעם אחת, הלילה הזה, שתי פעמים, הלילה הזה, שתי פעמים, שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים בין יושבינו בין מסובין, בין יושבינו בין מסובין, הלילה הזה, כולנו מסובין, הלילה הזה, כולנו מסובין. Back on page 22, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halaylot means how different is this night from all other nights, or why is this night different from all other nights, or really, this night is different from the other nights. Why is this night different? We have four reasons, four things that make it different that we're going to explain later in the Seder. Shebachol halilot means on all other nights. So the first, on all other nights, we eat bread or matzah. You can eat matzah anytime during the year, right? But halayla hazeh, on this night, we eat only matzah. On all other nights, we eat all kinds of vegetables. On this night, and it's not we eat only maror, right? That's a bad translation. Halayla hazeh maror. In addition to all the other vegetables that we may eat, tonight we are sure to eat what? What is maror? The bitter, something bitter, right? It can be horseradish, it can be romaine lettuce. You'll see a lot of times the bitter part of the lettuce. You could use wasabi, right? I'm sure they do in some places. So far, those two, just since we're keeping track, those two are both from the Torah, right? What were the components of our biblical Passover?
Nothing but yeast.
So matzah,
Bitter
maror, and what was in the backyard? Nope. What was in the backyard the night before? What? Yeah, the sacrifice of the lamb. Right? No?
I thought it's chicken.
What?
I thought it's a chicken. By the sound, we thought it's a chicken.
Oh. No, it was like the horror movie then. No? You were with me? You were with me. All right.
Don't quit your day job.
Now, the next two were not part of the biblical Passover. On all other nights, we do not have to dip vegetables even once. On this night, why do we dip them twice, right? First, the parsnips or the salt water. The other is going to be the bitter herb, the maror, into the charoset, which we haven't made yet. Oh, I got to start moving. Okay, last. On all other nights, we eat our meals sitting any way we like. On this night, why do we lean on pillows, or why do we recline? Good. How many of you were not here last week? Okay, because a lot of this I talked about last week, but I'll try to repeat what I need to without redoing everything for those who were here. All right. I think we're going to have answers directly to those four, but just quickly in case we don't. The matzah, right, it was in the Torah. The real reason why we eat matzah, by the way, I think I said this last week, as long as we're, right, there probably, just like with Sukkot, there probably was a pagan festival of unleavened bread, right? So just like lulav and etrog, that was one of those things that we probably took and said, we're going to take this festival that everyone does and we're going to make it Jewish, right? So the matzah ends up being connected to what? In the story, someone else.
There wasn't time.
Someone else.
There wasn't time to pick any bread.
Good.
At a rush.
Good. You've answered a lot already.
I was sure it's from that.
Well, but one of the things that we've talked about in this class is some of the more academic back. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with me.
Okay.
Okay, in the Torah it says we have matzah because the bread didn't have time to rise, right? But I showed you last week that we got this command 4 days before, right? So we knew this was coming. All right, why do we eat the bitter herb? Good, the suffering and the bitterness of slavery. Why do we dip our vegetables? 2 answers. One is for each one, right? The salt water, we talked about the tears. The bitter herb into the haroset will be kind of the mixing of the bitter with the sweet. But what about our Roman feast? You would have the different courses, and the appetizer course would be a lot of dipping. Okay? And why do we recline? The Romans reclined, and it's a symbol of being free. Good. All right, and that leads us to page 24. Avadim hayinu lefaro b'mitzrayim. This night is different from all other nights because once we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. But Adonai our God took us with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. If Adonai, God, had not brought our ancestors out of Egypt, then we and our children and our children's children would still be slaves in the land of Egypt. Even if we know the story well and have told it many times, the more we tell it in great detail, the more we are to be praised. This night is also different because once we worshipped idols, and now we worship only Adonai, the one who is everywhere, right? And this is like what we were talking about last week, that even the one who knows the story of Passover, front and back, should, even if there are no children involved whatsoever, is to perform this Seder every year, to retell the story and to ask questions. Okay? All right. Page 26. And all of this is part of, if you're looking, I didn't say it, if you're looking at your table of contents, this is all part of the Magid, or the story. But in the traditional Haggadah, it doesn't go through and tell you the full story. In fact, whose name doesn't appear even once in the traditional Haggadah? Someone who hasn't answered a question yet. Moses. Right? Moses' name does not appear once in the traditional Haggadah because there was fear that the story would become too much about Moses and not about God. Okay? So Moses' name doesn't appear once. The story itself in the traditional Haggadah is not flat out told. You'll see it, I think we have it in here. But this is all part of the Magid, the storytelling section, even though we haven't gotten to the story yet. And now we have the 4, this is very nice, it says the 4 children. And traditionally it's the 4 sons. And these 4 sons, my favorite Haggadah has a picture that has 4 people, it's paper cuttings, and there's orange, blue, there are 4 colors. And each person has all 4 colors. Because as we go through the 4 types of children, ultimately we see that there's a bit of each of them in each of us. Okay? The first is the wise son, or the wise child. The wise child might ask, and at our temple Seder we break into 4 quadrants. And, well, let's have you guys, we'll do it. These 2 tables will be my wise child. Read it for me together. The wise...
What is the meaning of the laws and the rules which Adonai our God has commanded us?
Keep going.
We should explain to this child in great detail all the laws and customs of Passover.
Okay, so some kids are going to be super inquisitive. Some people are going to already have studied, and they're going to want to know all the laws and all the customs. But then, our wicked children in the back...
The wicked child might ask, what does this service mean to you? Since this child does not want to be included in this celebration, we must answer harshly. We celebrate Passover because of what Adonai did for us. If you had been in Egypt, you would not have done Adonai freed us from slavery.
Right? There's always someone cynical. We call it the wicked child here. He says, why are we doing this again? I'm tired of it. I know the story. I was, whatever. We were there. We're here now. Enough. Right? So for that child, for that kind of person, Again, here it's a little brutal, right? If you would have been in Egypt, you wouldn't have been saved. But the idea is teaching how can we make this apply to you. Okay? Then the simple child over to my right.
The simple child may ask,
What is this all about? We answer simply that, with a mighty hand, Adonai took us out of Egypt.
Right? These are our traditional answers. All of these are biblical verses. But again, the idea that the laws are over the head, right? So it's just how do we make it simple, right? We were in Egypt, now we're free. Just make sure that simple answer doesn't get lost in all of the details. Don't have the details. Yeah.
In Hebrew, it's innocent child. It's not simple.
Tongue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Innocent, simple. Okay. And then we also have the child who doesn't know how to ask or doesn't know enough to ask a question. We must explain to this child that we observed Passover to remember what God did for us when we were freed from slavery in Egypt. Do we have any teachers? No? Anyone who studied multiple intelligences? Yeah? Right? Really, this is the first example of acknowledgement of multiple intelligences, right? That we know now some kids learn audio, some kids learn visual, some kids learn by touching, some kids are musical, and teachers are told, here are all the different kinds of intelligences. Your job is to try to teach to each of these kids. Well, 2,000 years ago, we were already there. We only had 4. But does everyone see that? And this is the first time, I think, that you really see teach each one in the way that you need to. Not everyone learns the same way. All right. Now, page 28 through 32. We're not going to read word for word, okay? And didn't I tell you all that did everyone read, what did I say? That you had to read Exodus up through chapter 13 or 14, didn't I? How many of you did it? Oh, some of you did. All right, so Pharaoh decreed, right, the Israelites were growing in number. Pharaoh decreed that every firstborn, or every Israelite male should be drowned in the Red Sea, okay? Well, one Israelite child is born. Does everyone know the story? Right? He's put into the Sea of Reeds. How many have seen the movie? The Ten Commandments? Now, did you guys know, so Moses is put in a basket down the Sea of Reeds. He's found by Pharaoh's daughter. Good. Now, everyone knows that Miriam was kind of following along, right? Now, in the Ten Commandments, when little Miriam follows behind Moses, you guys know who played little Miriam? Our own Cantor Bain was the young Miriam in the Ten Commandments. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I'm supposed to. Okay, then I'm allowed to say it. Yep. So there's your Shari Tzedek trivia for tonight. Don't do the math. All right. Then Moses grows up. He becomes a trusted son, or I guess grandson of Pharaoh. And the story goes that he was out minding his business, and he saw an Egyptian taskmaster beating an Israelite slave. He knew something was wrong with this, and he killed the Egyptian taskmaster and knew he would then be killed, so he runs away. Right? While he's away, he sees what? Burning bush. God speaks to him through the burning bush, says, you know my Israelites, you're now in charge. This is the abbreviated version. Go read the story. You're now in charge. Go and lead them to freedom. He doesn't want to do it. He gets talked into it. And he said, why is this Pharaoh going to listen to me? And God says, I'll be with you every step of the way. So he goes to Pharaoh.